Well, we're going to be talking about credit bureaus and how they have affected the economy, whether positively or negatively. And what are these credit bureaus going through to ensure that they give credit or help the banks to give credit to people who are seeking facilities? Well, I'm being joined on the program by the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of CRC Credit Bureau, Tunde Popoola. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Well, it's been, 2 years since credit bureaus were actually welcomed into the Nigerian financial sector. But could you elaborate more on this? Because a lot of people know that credit bureaus, or as the name suggests, credit bureaus are supposed to facilitate credit either to the banks or to investing public. But really, what's it all about?
Okay, thank you so much. It's actually been around 4 years now because the 3 credit bureaus were licensed in 2009, just around this time in May, June 2009. Since that time, we have been operating in the market. A credit bureau is just an infrastructure to assist lenders to be able to share information about borrowers. So what we do is collect information from all lenders in the economy who submit information about their borrowers so that when we put all this information together, they can have what we call credit history about the borrowers. What does that do? It assists them to throw out what we call haphazard selection, so they're able to now know where exactly should they be lending to. Second, it also assists them to be able to take decisions very swift, very quickly, so that they won't waste time, because just accessing the information and know the credit history of such person will assist them to know whether to proceed immediately or whether to decline or whether to ask for additional collateral. Okay,
so has this relationship, has it worked out very well in the last 4 years?
Oh yes, when the bureau started, what we did is to start from the known to the unknown. The Nigerian banking system, commercial banks generally have information about their borrowers. So we started taking data from the commercial banks, and that was assisted by the central bank, who mandated them to also use at least 2 out of the 3 credit bureaus that are licensed. So with that, we have the first level of data from the commercial bank. And today, all the commercial banks in Nigeria are using the credit bureaus. But beyond that, we've now moved on to other sectors. All the discount houses have joined, the microfinance banks are joining, mortgage banks, leasing companies, all of these are joining now. So what some of the bureaus are doing now is to now be looking for other data beyond data from the banks. Moving to travel agency business, moving to pharmaceutical businesses, the retailers. These are all places where you can get additional data, because Nigeria relies heavily on informal lending.
Exactly.
So when you have a high level of informal lending, but the level of lending taking place in the formal lending sector is extremely very low in Nigeria. Quite a lot of consumers, quite a lot of SMEs who are supposed to be the beneficiaries of availability of credit bureaus tend to carry out a lot of their transactions outside the banking system. So the credit bureaus are now looking towards that area. But there are also issues relating to that.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, we've had so much issue about customers providing information. Yeah. Now, would you say that, like some have actually expressed concern over the quality of credit information from the credit bureau, that sometimes it's not as accurate as it should be, or maybe misplacement of facts? How would you react to that?
Well, information gathering is very sensitive and is extremely very technical. It requires a lot of, from where you are getting the information. First of all, there must be accurate information coming from there. So the banking system is where we started from. Basically, you need information on the demographics of the lenders, of the borrowers, pardon me. You need the information about the loans they have taken over the last 3 to 5 years. And so where you don't have information on demographics in the system, it becomes very difficult. So that's the part of the challenge you have. And that's why when we started, for the first 2 years, everybody was trying to work. Each of the bureaus were working with the Nigerian banks to be able to see how we can enhance the quality of data that are coming from that place. The banks themselves are not used to giving information on borrowers. They are used to sitting down face to face with their customers and negotiate and discuss issues relating to borrowing. But now you are moving to a situation where you want to depersonalize review of loan applications. So You can only do that when you have a lot of information.
Now, apart from getting information from the banks,
yeah.
do you get information from probably the national database? Because there's also been called into question that the banks, yes, everybody or a lot of people are supposed to be going to the banks, but not everybody has a bank account, as has been revealed in a couple of times, that not everybody has a bank account. And so situations like that, how have you had to deal with those kind of things?
Well, if you don't have an account with a bank, it's difficult. So the only way for us to be able to get information about you is now to go to non-banking institutions. And that's what we have started. For instance, quite a lot of leasing companies are operating very well in Nigeria, and they are lending to SMEs. They're making credit accessible to SMEs. We have that. A lot of microfinance banks are also in Nigeria. We have almost 1,000 microfinance banks in Nigeria. And these are institutions that also have information about borrowers, especially consumers and one-man businesses and micro businesses. So we're getting a lot of information from there. So we now move into, for instance, cooperative societies. Okay. Now, so when you move to cooperative society, you have a lot of consumer data to get from that.
Yes, especially because most people that's like the middle to low income earning population.
Exactly, and some of them don't even have account with banks. Some have account with banks, but they have only savings account, which is not what we are interested in. We are interested in credit. Okay, so this is where we are going now. Ability to penetrate the informal sector or not relatively sophisticated sectors and see how we can populate that data and see how, because we know people they have been borrowing. Nigerians have been borrowing one way or the other, but those borrowings are taking place outside the banking system, much more. The kind of credit you have in the banking system are, tilted towards the large corporates. So when you have that, only few have access to the credit system in Nigeria. So credit bureaus have to think outside the box.
Exactly.
To see what
so now you're going to have a lot of issues with credit defaulters. Apart from the fact that information is one problem, credit defaulting is also another issue. So how have you, as CRC, been able to manage that?
Our job is to really be able to take out serial defaulters, to be able to assist banks and lenders generally to be able to deal with that. So when you have access to our platform in CRC, for instance, you are able to see the performance, the historical performance of a particular borrower. So with that, you can say, okay, I've seen this guy, he's taken an auto loan, 24 months, but he's defaulted over 3 or 12 months out of the 24 months. So I'm not going to give him another loan, or I'm going to give him another loan with stricter conditions or with some level of collateral. So it assists you to take informed lending decisions.
But if you keep doing that, at the end of the day, you can't have any other stricter measures to use to regulate the borrower anymore. So what are you going to do? Because you have to protect the monies, the funds. If not, it's going to be another case of here today, gone tomorrow. The money is here today, gone tomorrow. Or the individual is here today and he's gone tomorrow. So what are you going to do, apart from the fact that you might put in stricter measures by the second time if he's coming to borrow? For instance, if he took out an auto loan the first time and he defaulted on his payment, he's come to take a mortgage loan, and he's also going to, and probably he has shown signs that he's going to default. What are you going to do to ensure that these funds are protected and the person doesn't keep going away with the money? Because it's going to cause more problem for us in the long run. You
know that the credit bureau is a database. Once that facility, that information is in the bureau, who else will give you money? If you defaulted in one place and you're unable to, repay as agreed with your lender, then you have shut yourself out of the system. That's how it works. In fact, it's a moral thing. It's a conscience. It's to enhance consciousness and make sure that borrowers themselves know that they have to protect their own repayment plans. Because if you are unable to protect your repayment plans, what will happen to you is that once you are unable to repay, then subsequent loans is not going to come your way. And when we talk about subsequent loans, we are not just talking about loans from the bank. Even to get a postpaid access in telephone, to get insurance cover, to get all manners of credit is going to be very difficult for you. That's the beauty of the credit bureau. Your name is in the system. You are going to make sure that you protect that name by making sure that you behave yourself and pay according to what you have agreed.
Have you ever had a situation where a customer falsified information? Because we're talking about giving information, sharing information, but we do know that people have graduated from petty thieving to industrial and international thieving, okay? And then we have people who actually falsify their information to ensure that they keep collecting credit from lenders. What do you do to ensure that all information that you get is actually accurate?
Well, we work seriously with the suppliers of information themselves. There's a lot of capacity building that we do, a lot of training, a lot of what are the things they should be looking out for in submitting data to us, so that they can also filter away those information that are not correct. Because it's a very serious issue. If you give us wrong information, then we bring wrong information and give wrong information to the general public who are using our database. So we've tried as much as possible to educate them. There are validation rules that you go through. The software tries to answer quite a lot of questions. I mean, ask a lot of questions, and if those questions are not able to be read, it doesn't accept those data. So you have a situation where a bank submits or a lender submits so much information, but a proportion of it is rejected because there's a question mark on those information. And so that is one way to deal with that. The other ways to deal with that is to ensure that lenders generally scrutinize the kind of information they are submitting, especially demographics information. Because easily every borrower can have access to his own records. And when they have access to their own records, they can dispute such information. And there's a very robust process that enables everybody to dispute your data and say, okay, this data is not correct. And then we go through all rounds of making sure that we fix it and you get what is correct. Okay. Overall, the reality is that everybody should be aspiring to have very good information in the bureau.
Yes, I was going to. You know, we have in Nigeria we have postal code. We don't have zip code, but abroad in the US, for instance, in the UK, in Europe, we have issues where we have zip codes and we have postal codes. That has always made it very easy for them to trace individuals who are probably defaulting on their credit. But here in Nigeria, where we have just the postal code, it's been a little difficult tracing credit defaulters. How have you been able to address this? Has there been any situation where you needed to trace a credit defaulter? Probably the address the person gave was very vague. Probably said, I live at Isheri or I live at Bega. You know, that's not a very That's not a complete address. Yes. So how have you been able to address this?
Well, you know, we don't go around looking for validation of those information physically from house to house. What we have is that as an institution, you submit data to us that have these addresses, and we take on those addresses. What you are going to see is that if you are giving different addresses, for instance, in various institutions, all the addresses that you have given will be reflected on your database, on the data. So if I've given 13 Alade Street Onipano as one address to a bank, and I've gone to a microfinance bank, I've given another bank at K2. When we merge the information, the two addresses are going to be there. And that says a lot also about you. It calls to question, where exactly is this person? Some give addresses of where they live in one situation. They give addresses where they work in another situation. Some even give other people's addresses on their behalf, uncle's address and so on and so forth. When we merge this information, all those addresses come into play. We see it. The lender sees it.
Now this now affects what kind of, if you are going to give credit at the end of the day.
So what we do is just to enhance ability to take informed decisions. It's just for you to have this information and then use that to evaluate whoever is trying to borrow. And all those tiny kind of information, like the example you are giving, is an indication of whether this one has fraudulent tendencies or whether he's an upright person and so on and so on. So you can then take him. Why do you have one address for Unipo and another one for K2, another one for Abuja? What are you doing in all those places? Then you is able to explain it, and that gives you opportunity to appraise him further and take your decision as a lender.